Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday, June 24th budget session of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. Would you please all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Roll call, please. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Pine. Here. Supervisor Horsley.
Here.
Supervisor Slocum. Supervisor Tessier. Here. President Groom.
Present. So now we're going to take action to set the agenda and to approve consent calendar items, of which there are none. Okay.
Move approval of the agenda and set the consent agenda as well.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. So our first will be social services. Welcome, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Groom, honorable members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Byers. It's my pleasure to introduce the recommended budget for Human Services Agency. And one moment while the slides queue up. There we go. The mission of the Human Services Agency is basically the strength and the resiliency of San Mateo County lies in the health and the prosperity of our community. Our agency assists individuals and families to achieve economic self-sufficiency and ensures that our county's children are safe, which ultimately serves to strengthen all aspects of our community life. The vision of the agency is a commitment to a culture of continuous improvement, client experience, employee engagement, innovation, and a focus on results, among other things. Looking at self-sufficiency in our county, the slide shows the far right federal poverty guidelines, about a little over $23,000 in income to be eligible for services within our agency. Above that is San Mateo County's self-sufficiency standard, which is about 85,000 people, $85,000 a year. We have approximately 35,000 people in our county which fall between that income gap, that self-sufficiency gap. A key measure for the agency is the timeliness with which we process our applications for assistance. The department overall has done well. However, you can see where we lag is our Medi-Cal enrollment. Historical enrollments, an issue with the CalHER system, continue to hamper our operations statewide, not only in San Mateo. Our staff has done an excellent job of managing our second open enrollment. We have less than 800 cases that are backlogged today. 80% of them are eligible for services. Our priority over these coming weeks is to process the 155 applications who have not been deemed eligible for health insurance. Since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, our Medi-Cal enrollment has more than doubled in this county. We've gone from 33,000 families pre-ACA to over 68,000 families today. Our call center, because we are addressing the issue of our backlogs, the drop in terms of calls is significant. At its peak, it was 30,000 calls a month. We're at 19,000 calls as of May. Consequently, our wait times have decreased 43%. A second key measure for the agency is the percentage of children who are reunified with their parent or guardians within a 12-month period from being removed from their home. As you can see, we've made incremental progress. This year, we're glad to report we're finally at the national standard, which is 75%. Accomplishments, we've had many, but I'd like to highlight just a few for you this afternoon. Our work participation rate has gone from an anemic 1.8 just over a year ago to approximately 48% today. We are almost at the national standard. Through the help of your board, we've expanded our contract with South Bay Recycling. We now operate 2 shifts there where we refer people for employment training. Again, we have one of the highest enrollment rates. 91% of our residents today benefit from health insurance. Through the commitment of your board and the determination of the county manager's office, we've seen a 47% reduction in unsheltered individuals in our county. There were, at the last homeless count, 0 families with children identified on the street. Veterans, you may recognize the gentleman in the picture. This last year, we've had an assessment of our veterans' needs. We formed a commission, and yes, we issued IDs for our veterans, which now have access to discounts throughout the county. The first card was issued to Supervisor Slocum. As of last week, we have issued 102 cards. We held our first citizens workshop just a few months ago in North County. We helped over 400 people with their citizenships, waiving of fees. 400 citizens are now one step closer to their full citizenship benefits. Agency-wide, internally, we focused on quality assurance. And we have now our quality assurance units over our 3 programs, thanks to the efforts of our Assistant Director, Nicole Pollack. We also, this past year, embarked on our new 5-year strategic plan. Being in social services, we have the privilege of serving our most needy residents. And while there's room for improvement through our stakeholder meetings, many of our clients had some quotes I wanted to share with you today. In CalWorks, the CalWorks is building my foundation. They are the main support system. I'm able to spend time with my son, work, and I'm getting a bachelor's degree. From our AB 109 client, the program held on to me when they could have lost me. And the youths, I can't remember, our foster care youth, I can't remember having hopes or dreams when I was young. Now I want to have a family, I want to have a career, and I want to help others like I was helped. That's why we're in social services. In terms of challenges, the agency's 5-year strategic plan will be published in August and will align the agency's work with the county's goals, creating a clear line of sight across its programs and provide unified direction with which to achieve our goals. The division plans will be developed later this year. I want to thank your board for your continued commitment to our foster children. And with the Measure A funds allocated this year, we'll have an RFP released early this summer, which will focus specifically on improving gaps in education and employment for our foster youth. Our county has many foster youth residing outside of our county. Over the next 2 years, we will focus our efforts around foster family recruitment to see if we can house more of them here. In the upcoming budget cycle, the agency's focus is on raising the standards of delivery of our core services, including a critical evaluation of the efficacy of our task-based system currently in place, and enhancing the agency-wide training and developing offerings with the goal of strengthening our workforce knowledge and improving outcomes for our clients. In addition, with your board support, we have contracted with Focus Strategies to update our HOPE plan. We'll be engaging the board, the HOPE IAC Council, our key partners in leadership to redesign our continuum of care. All the work done last year now enables us to work with our newly formed Veterans Commission to improving outcomes for veterans, to include focus on women, homeless vets, and those with complex needs. Finally, the agency is also exploring services for immigrant residents. We're building partnership with external agencies, identifying and coordinating with existing county resources, and understanding the landscape and offering and the potential gaps of our residents so that we may better serve our diverse community. I also want to point out that with the help of our core system, our core service agencies, and our homeless providers, we now have one system for our providers, the Clarity system, and I want to thank them for all the work they put into implementing this system. Implementing systems is not easy, and I'm eternally grateful for their support and hanging in there while we get through some of the conversion issues. In terms of future Measure A dollars, the board, as you see, has approved contracts with Project We Hope, an expansion to the HOT teams, our CASA providers, core agency performance measures, homeless prevention, which is operated through our cores, our daybreak and transitional youth services with Star Vista, prevention and early intervention of at-risk children, and that's the expansion of our FRCs in our schools and our supportive hotline. Our veteran services has also been funded, and reentry, our REAP program in the parks, providing employment opportunities for individuals reentering our community after incarceration. In terms of new measures, we have the 1 million pounds of food for Second Harvest, the homeless prevention analysis, that focus strategy contract for our continuum of care, expansion for five public health nurses to ensure that our foster children have updated medical records and timely medical evaluations when they enter our system. Services and training, not only for us, but for our probation partners on the issue of commercially and sexually exploited children, and that's in partnership with our Sheriff's Office and the Chief of Police Association. Our Transitional Youth and Housing program, that's $1 million that has been set aside to identify housing for our AB 12 youth. And our Safe Harbor Shelter, support for continuing operations. They've lost the transitional housing dollars from the federal government, and your board has approved support of the shelter. In addition, as I mentioned, we'll have RFPs coming this summer. There's money set aside for rapid rehousing and housing locator services. Another for our homelessness service, our continuum of care redesign. When that redesign is complete, there's been money set aside for what those gaps may be that are identified so that we can fill them. And then for our at-risk youth, an RFP around education, improving their independent living skills around education and vocational training. In terms of our budget, you'll see that there is an increase in the total sources and requirements, due in large part of the generosity of the board. We have about $6 million in Measure A, new Measure A dollars. There's new positions, additional social workers and employment services. That's about $2.1 million. Negotiated salary increases, CBOs, COLAs are included in there, and some service charges. Our second year, you'll see an overall decrease in the sources and requirements, and that's due in part to a reduction of that one-time Measure A dollars largely, and there is the elimination of one position. It's an analyst position. There's no layoffs. The person is reassigned to our contracts bureau. And with that, I'd like to thank the board, Mr. Malpe and his deputy county managers for all their support this past year. I want to thank my executive team, who in my opinion are just the best. They make coming to work fun. Finally, I want to thank my line staff and the supervisors. Individual many years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli once said, "There's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." A budget reflects the vision, strategies, and priorities of an organization. The feedback my staff provided last year doing many town hall meetings and discussions helped focus many of the internal priorities you see today, and I thank them for their candor. With that, thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments?
I have a comment. I don't know, we've talked about this in previous years, is to look throughout the county to figure out where the actual needs are for HSA clients and then where we actually are providing the services. Have we ever completed something like that? I know we've talked about it a couple times. Just to be sure that, in other words, if in the North County you have hundreds of people that need help, but most of the services are in the Mid and South County, and that there aren't as many that need it here, are we distributing the services, one, in an efficient way, and two, in a convenient way for those that actually need the services?
Right. We're starting to do some of that. Some of the investments this year is in technology infrastructure. We have some outdated infrastructure that we're going to be replacing this year. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to get just a simple report to do some of this mapping. And as our technology catches up to where we want to be driving our programs, we'll see more of that. But we try to do that anytime we're looking at contracts and delivering services.
Okay. And the other question I had for you, you mentioned 102 cards were issued, the veterans cards. I just don't recall what the number of veterans that exist in our county. I know we have a Veterans Commission. I don't remember what those numbers were.
The last count had it at 33,000. I think it's declining. It's probably more in the range of under 30,000 today.
And maybe the second question to that is, are you doing outreach to bring them in to get cards, or is it just something that you put out there and slowly but surely it's catching on in some of the veterans organizations and commissions and things like that?
We're doing some outreach. We've been posting. They continuously, since we do outreach at the VA, at Menlo Park, South San Francisco, that's where the word is getting out. I believe there's a waiting list in terms of coming in to get your photo ID.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just a question on Service Connect. How long will that continue? Because eventually, I would assume all that AB 109 stuff eventually kind of works out of the system eventually. You can see the Service Connect continuing? I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, the idea
Right.
that connecting people with services and jobs, and that's the one way that you're going to make sure that they do not come back into the criminal justice system.
I envision it continuing. If the dollars aren't in AB 109, then we'll have to have a discussion of where else. But for now, we're pretty secure.
I agree. The dollars are probably not going to follow, but I think the program really is key to the success of reducing recidivism. If you don't have a job and you don't have a transitional housing, you have only one other option, that's go back into that same life of crime.
Exactly.
But, I also looked at the South Bay recycling, looked at the jobs that the people have there. If that isn't something that encourages you to get an education or look for another job, I don't know what will.
That's not easy
I spent
work.
an hour there and I thought, oh my God.
Yeah,
and
I toured it
it's a
also.
tough one.
Yep.
But I do work a lot with your staff on, I obviously go to Voc Rehab and work with Selena on the Hope Project, and before it was Wendy Goldberg. And I really appreciate the staff and the support that you give, and the staff that the support that they give to that project. And I certainly, I think the core agencies, that is really whoever figured that idea out to be able to deliver services to the community really was well thought out, and I think they do an excellent job. And your support of the core agencies is notable and helpful, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. They're an integral partner in delivering
They
services.
are good partners, right?
Anybody down here? Supervisor Slocum?
Yeah, thank you. On the vocational rehab services page, it's 327.
Of course.
It has some data here. a record 77 reentry clients were placed into jobs. And then down in the chart, it says percent of VRS clients and job development who secure employment. So I guess that would be people that go through the program and then actually get a job. And that percent is 55%. And I'm wondering if we might recalibrate that somehow or put some additional emphasis in there to potentially increase the number of folks that are going through VRS that actually get jobs. I know that the South Bay Recycling, people have gone on to jobs through that program, and I know there are successes, but I'm just wondering about some additional focus in that area.
Right, we just had the good fortune of hiring our new Employment Services Director, Jennifer Valencia, who's come with some fabulous ideas, and I think we'll see a lot of new energy around some of these programs. And subsidized employment, I know, is also a focus of hers. So getting more employers engaged, because we could subsidize some employment.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for all the work you've done in kind of just the basic blocking and tackling of organizing a big you have a lot of systems and serve a lot of people, and I think you've done a great job of bringing more discipline to that and more efficiency to that. I mean, certainly from your past work in child support, you measured everything, and I'm glad to see you measuring here as well. When we look at the percentage the Medi-Cal calls achieved within the limit, do we have what is our goal going forward? Do we think we can hit that? I guess the benchmark is 90. We're at 72. What is our goal for the next 2 years?
Exceed 90. We are close, outside of the open enrollment period, we are trending at 89%. When
Okay.
you do the average, because of the enrollment bubble, it drops your overall average. So we're going to get over the 90%, and we're pushing the state to get some fixes to the CalHER system. It's really the one that has handcuffed us.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything. We'll go to Ms. Cagno in the Department of Child Support Services.
Good afternoon, President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. My name is Kim Conyo, and I'm happy to be here today as the new director of the Department of Child Support Services to present my budget. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for children by establishing and enforcing child support orders in an effective and efficient manner so that parents can meet the financial, emotional, and medical needs of their children. Child support is a two-generation program addressing the needs of parents and their children together. Our vision is for both parents to responsibly share in providing for their children and raising them to be healthy and successful. Two primary indicators for the department is collections on current child support and collections on arrears. As you can see, collections in both areas remained flat during the economic downturn in 2008 through 2010. Despite continued reduction in program funding from the state, the department has experienced significant gains in increase in income to family households. Today, over 68% of families in San Mateo County are receiving payments on current support. That's 3% higher than the state average, and over 70% are receiving collections on arrears. That's over 4.2% higher than the state average. Through early intervention strategies, we promote parental responsibility and help parents access the resources they need to support their children. We work to collaboratively establish a support order that is reasonable and results in steady payments to the family. When circumstances change, we proactively move to modify the order by stipulation, thereby avoiding costly and time-consuming court proceedings. In San Mateo County, the number of people living below the poverty line continues to rise. The child support program helps to move families out of poverty. In 2014, our skilled workforce collected $29.5 million, of which 94% was sent directly to families, increasing their income by an average of $1,100 per month. That's 12% higher than the statewide average of $970 per month. Based on our caseload, 1 in 10 family households with minor children in San Mateo County receive services from our department, reaching over 9,800 children. The child support program is a good investment. We are cost effective. For every dollar expended, $3 is collected to strengthen families. In addition, the program recovers costs for state, welfare, and foster care expended. Accomplishments. Our accomplishments over the last 2 years we've continued to utilize technology to support an improved service delivery model. In 2014, we implemented e-filing of legal actions with the courts, reducing timeframes from 14 days to 2 days. That means quicker turnaround for families to receive financial support. Transition to an electronic mail workflow allows our caseworkers to immediately view incoming mail and improves response time for next action on the child support case. In 2015, the department moved to an electronic case file, eliminating the need for a physical file. All pertinent documents are stored in our child support system, can be easily retrieved and reviewed. MoneyGram is a new convenient payment option available to parents who pay support, and there are over 370 MoneyGram locations in San Mateo County to choose from. To date, we have received over $38,000 in collections, of which $10,000 are new collections. All these initiatives provide innovative approaches toward modernization of the child support program and align with the county shared vision. Challenges. The child support program is fully funded by the federal and state government and does not draw from the county general fund. Our challenges are focused in 2 areas. 1, we have received flat or reduced funding for close to a decade, yet the cost of doing business continues to rise. 2, there is a concern that a change in funding methodology could mean deeper funding cuts for our department. Despite these challenges, we have continued to help families achieve economic stability. The far-reaching progress is done through the meaningful conversation that our highly skilled workforce has with parents who seek our services. They are working each day to educate and help parents navigate the complex and very emotional world of child support. Our priorities over the next 2 years is to strengthen families through a 3-tiered approach. We will improve our service delivery model by leveraging technology to improve the customer's experience. Second, connecting services. We will continue to partner with the Human Services Agency to provide employment services. We will maintain our outpost of our caseworkers to the Family Law Facilitator's Office, Veterans Hospital, Bay Area Legal, McGuire Correctional Facility, Probation, and link to the Housing Authority to help families obtain affordable housing. These are just a few of the connections we have in place to support families to self-sufficiency. Community engagement. We will expand our community engagement by participating in outreach events in order to educate other agencies and the public about the services we provide, and continue with targeted outreach to high schools to raise awareness about the emotional, financial, and legal consequences of teen parenthood. The Measure A slide is removed as we have no Measure A funding. The department operates on a budget of $11.5 million. Department's recommended budget for 15-16 reflects a decrease of under 1%. In order to align with the funding received from the State Department of Child Support Services, a total of 6 vacant positions are eliminated in the 15-16 budget. There will be no impact to core services. The department is projecting a 2% increase in cost of doing business in 16-17 and will continue to monitor our expenditures and vacancies in order to balance the budget. This concludes my presentation. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Maltby for your continued support. And of course, to my talented staff, especially my executive management staff, my program managers, my administrative division manager, my lead attorney, supervisors, and to our line staff, who really are the folks that are on the front lines and dedicated to helping parents and families be self-sufficient. They have a great passion for what they do, and they're very proud to serve the families of San Mateo County. I'll
Thank
take any
you.
questions you have at this time.
I guess I have one question. In 16-17, it looks like you're gonna go back up to a little bit more than you had in 14-15, which the change is only about $250,000, but does that allow you, with that change, any addition? I see you're not adding staff, but does it give you any cushion for adding staff, or is this strictly still that flat funding, basically?
Still the flat funding, so it doesn't allow us to really add staff.
Well, you've done a terrific job with the tools you have, and I'm pleased to see that you've done a great job, and congratulations on your new position, too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave?
And Kim, I just want to thank you for the data you provided to all of us showing, you know, the families broken down by district was really interesting information.
Welcome.
Just what's the rationale on the part of the state to, you know, you're having to reduce staffing at the same time, you know, there are more and more children who are needing the services of your agency. What do they say, or?
Well, it's kind of a large question, but I'll answer it the best way that I can. I think that there hasn't been a lot of focus at the Fed and state level that, you know, it's raising the awareness that child support program needs the sufficient funding. Our systems are starting to age, even though we converted to a statewide system years ago. I do believe with the direction of Alicia Griffin, our new 4D director at the state level that was appointed in November of last year, that with her vision and her direction that we will be heard. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will receive additional funding. So we are, you know, we're working within our means, you know, and utilizing technology and having, you know, meaningful conversations in order to continue our services. So we've stripped away pretty much everything, and we can't strip away our core services. So it is concerning.
Well,
Madam President, I was just going to add to Kim's comments, and I can't underscore enough the outstanding job that Kim and her staff do to make the resources available stretch as far and still have unbelievably good results with that. But the problem goes back a number of years when really the county was directly receiving federal funds for this program. We managed it with moderate surpluses. We had state-of-the-art technology. And then the state decided that they could do a better job of assuming the responsibility for managing these programs. Well, I don't remember any program that the state has ever done a better job in managing than has been managed by local authorities. In fact, there's a conversation I had with a director of the State Department of Social Services a number of years ago that I understand is still quoted at meetings, where I told him that if we don't get sufficient resources for our programs, to let me know where I could hand the keys to the program over to the state so they could run it. And we've never taken us up on that offer.
Well, okay, so thanks for your, I mean, I have seen the number of people diminish. At the same time, your collections have increased, so thanks to you and your staff and
Thank you.
your predecessor as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, doing a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Porter, Public Works.
Thank you, President Grimm, members of the board, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Malpe, and Mr. Byers. It's my pleasure to present the Department of Public Works budget for the upcoming 2 fiscal years, 15-16 and 16-17. So our department basically is the design, construction, and maintenance wing of the county. We hire a wide variety of professional engineers as well as highly trained maintenance folks to maintain the public infrastructure that the county owns and maintains. A couple of our key indicators. The graph on your left is energy consumption. And we've been very happy with a lot of the work that we've done to reduce our energy usage in county facilities. A few years back, we completed an energy master plan, and we're beginning to see the fruits of our labor. Particularly at McGuire, we've replaced the major mechanical systems, and we're seeing very good reductions in energy consumption there. We're about to embark on several projects with the health and hospital systems to provide energy generation to offset our use of PG&E electricity and power. The graph on the right shows the percentage of our roads that are above our maintenance of effort requirement. So basically what that shows you is that we're maintaining a constant level of pavement condition index throughout the county. And I'll talk a little bit more about the challenges of continuing that in the future and some of our funding challenges with the road fund. We also, last year, completed our Facility Condition Information System update. That is a software system that we use to schedule and prioritize our capital projects within our building systems. The last time that software was actually implemented about 7 years ago, and you really need to refresh those systems and the condition evaluations of the buildings, so that you make sure that you're attacking the highest priority projects first. We've also, I've already talked about the energy consumption reductions, but we've done quite a bit of work there, and we've seen a 13% reduction in electricity since that master plan was produced in the 10-11 fiscal year. In terms of our roads, we've done quite a bit of paving over the years, and that's really how we're maintaining our pavement condition index. You'll see the biggest number there is 39 miles of road sealed. That is chip seals and slurry seals. And those are very cost-effective ways to continue the life of a roadway and preserve your asset at a very low cost. So we've been very happy with that program. And the chip seal program itself, we've got our roads crew doing that work. So we do contract out the oil spreading, but our staff has become experts in chip sealing, and they do a very good job. We do have some challenges coming up in the next 2 years, though. State and federal transportation funding is something you'll be hearing more and more about. The buying power of transportation dollars has been flat or declining over the years. In fact, the gas tax hasn't been raised since the early 90s. Obviously, the cost of construction has gone up. We've been very fortunate in having a very healthy fund balance in the road fund. But in this next budget cycle, we will begin using some of that reserve to be able to maintain our pavement condition index. We'll be able to carry ourselves through for several years using our fund balance. However, if the state and federal government does not come up with a different way to fund roads and transportation, we will be looking at some issues with maintaining our pavement systems moving forward. We're also seeing a huge effort by our staff and the cities in this county in stormwater regulatory compliance. The Regional Water Quality Control Board has done a very good job of improving water quality for the waters that are going into the bay and the ocean. Unfortunately, they haven't provided funding to local jurisdictions to help with that. There is going to be a new regional permit issued at the end of this year, which includes provisions that require us to address mercury, PCBs, and also come up with a green infrastructure program. And basically what that is green streets. It's adding patches of grass and other vegetation so that stormwater can travel over it, the pollutants can fall out, and the water continues onto the bay or the ocean. Part of the issue with that, though, is parking, believe it or not. So you got to put those on the streets, and typically our streets have parking on them. So in North Fair Oaks, for instance, where parking is a big issue, in order for us to implement the requirements of the Regional Water Quality Control Board, we will be having to think creatively about how we're going to address the parking issues out there. Permitting is always a problem. We operate in an environment that is very pretty, and there's a lot of endangered species out there. So complying with federal and state requirements are somewhat challenging. It takes us anywhere from 6 to 18 months to get permits on our capital projects, and that will continue to be an issue. Part of that as well is the permitting agencies have had funding issues of their own, and what we're finding is that they simply don't have enough staff to process the permits that we're sending their way, as well as other jurisdictions. Water distribution system infrastructure is going to be another issue that comes up in the next 2 years. In CSA 7, which is La Honda, that water distribution system is literally falling apart in front of us. In fact, there was a water main break today at 11:50. We've got crews out there right now. Our contractor is fixing it. It will be fixed by the end of the day. But I can tell you the last year has been a series of water main breaks. I will talk about the capital program after I finish the department budget, but there is funding in there to look at some sort of a match for an assessment district that would be implemented in CSA 7 to fully replace the water distribution system. And finally, the Pescadero Transfer Station is going to be another issue that will come before your board moving forward. We're currently subsidizing removal of waste in that area by about anywhere between 180 and 150,000 a year. That funding is coming from the solid waste fund, which no longer has a revenue source. So as we move forward, we're going to try to adjust rates to minimize that subsidy. But in evaluating what it would take to have rates at cost recovery, they are so high that we're concerned about illegal dumping in that area. People simply won't take their trash to a transfer station if it's too expensive. And so we're trying to walk that fine line of maximizing cost recovery while minimizing illegal dumping on our roads. Preventive and predictive maintenance programs will also be fully vetted moving forward. I think one thing that we found with our building systems in particular is that if you stay on top of those systems and if you watch them function and monitor them properly, you will not only have better conditions within your buildings, but you'll also save money in the long run by replacing them at the right time, but also making sure that they're operating as efficiently as possible. We'll continue to work on energy conservation and efficiency programs, primarily outlined in the Energy Master Plan, but also working with departments to install solar and improve building systems in those areas. We've kind of taken care of the low-hanging fruit in terms of changing bulbs from incandescents to LEDs. Now we're really getting into major system replacements, and those are unfortunately big-ticket items. We'll continue with our roads projects. Obviously, we have great success in chips and slurries. We're going to continue there. And we're also going to implement many of the capital improvement projects that have been identified through our plans that are funded within the department. And those are primarily special districts such as our sewer districts, our water districts, our street lighting districts, and our flood control districts, as well as our 2 airports, San Carlos and Half Moon Bay. A few of the highlights, the Middlefield Road Streetscape project is kicking off. We had a huge meeting the other day with our consultant and many of the key stakeholders from the county to get that project moving. We have been working with the consultant to try to do some of the work that PG&E would normally do on the undergrounding part of it in order to expedite that. Because what we found is that PG&E obviously has many people wanting to underground their utilities. So our plan is to have our consultant do the design work so that we have a plan that's ready to go and hopefully save some time with PG&E in the front end of that. The Crystal Springs Dam Bridge replacement has been a legacy project that's gone on for more than 15 years. The good news is plans and specs are done. The bad news is the federal government has not passed a transportation budget. They basically put a Band-Aid on their current transportation budget to extend it. So what we're doing now is we're talking to Caltrans about what's called advanced construction authorization. What that is essentially putting a placeholder for federal funding once the federal budget gets approved, pre-funding it with local dollars, getting the project moving, and then when the federal government does pass a budget, they will backfill our dollars. Now, it's looking like the federal budget obviously should be passed by October 1st. This project will go out to bid this summer. We expect work to begin right about then, late fall. So the risk, although there is a risk, it's extremely minimal in terms of the county not seeing that funding in a year or two. We expect that money to come in. But that project is so important that we feel it's necessary to get that project moving. We will be, actually right now, we're working on the San Mateo Medical Center solar installation. Contractor is installing conduit and columns for the carport structures that'll be installed there. So that work's ongoing. That's a 1 megawatt electrical facility, so we'll be able to offset quite a bit of the energy use from the medical center with that project. We've actually had a great relationship with PG&E on that. We're going to actually be taking that energy and putting it right back into the grid with a separate meter, and that will give us credit against the electricity billings from the hospital. The reason why that's a big plus for us is that we're generating during peak periods, and PG&E has a variable rate schedule. So we'll actually be receiving peak period rate offsets while we're generating, and that'll be used to offset the electricity at the hospital. So that was quite a coup for us, and I think that was one of the great successes of some of the work that our facilities folks did. We're also in the process of putting in LED streetlights in all of our county-maintained lighting districts. This is a snapshot of our budget. Our budget is coming down a little bit from last year. That's primarily due to the transfer of our Recycle Works group into the Office of Sustainability. So that will occur this budget cycle. In fact, our folks will be reporting to Mr. Eggemeyer beginning July 1. We've also got a project to provide larger space for the Office of Sustainability in County Office Building 1 at 455. So once we finish some tenant improvements on the 4th floor for purchasing, we'll move sustainability over there. For the 15-16 to 16-17 differentials, the reduction in our budget there is primarily due to completion of in-department capital projects. So we've got quite a bit of work coming up, and we expect to see a $30 million expenditure for those projects. Oops, that concludes my presentation. And before I finish my remarks, I wanted to thank the staff that works on this. I have 4 deputy division heads: Ann Stillman, Joe Lococo, Doug Koenig, and Mike Wentworth. They've done a great job in preparing the budget, but I want to call out a couple people in particular. Deanna Haskell from the administrative group worked very hard on this budget, did a great job. And Mr. Michael Wentworth. Mr. Wentworth is running our administrative group until July 3rd when he's taken a position in HSA. So we want to thank Mr. Wentworth for his service for the department and wish him the best with the Human Services Agency. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Jim. Questions? Adrian?
Just a quick question, Jim, on the budget here, the 5 people, the change in is that 5 people that have then moved over to sustainability, or are these vacant positions that you're just not filling?
Those are actually, the primary result of that is the move of Recycle Works over to sustainability.
Okay, so those 5 people are over there now.
Yeah, we have a lot of ads and there's a bunch
I
of
see,
positions moving, but the net effect is 5. The bulk of that is Recycle Works.
Okay, thank you.
I just have kind of, I guess, not so much questions, so much as I want to know from you, do we really give you the resources you need to do your job? I mean, I look at all the stuff that your engineering, capital projects, your utilities district, sewer, sanitary, water districts, lighting, roads, working on the municipal regional permit, CSA 7, I was aware of you better believe they're calling our office about the water being out. We're working on a drought task force. Do we really give you the resources that you need to get your job done? I mean, I know you're
You're the president.
You're kind of an awkward position.
I wish
but-
that was a simple answer. So let me tell you what the department's plan
Well, let
is.
me give you one other thing too. Look, before I because this is probably a capital project, but you've got you're doing this Office of Emergency Services, the Public Safety Dispatch. We're going to do a new parking garage. We're looking at the county office building 1, whatever the numbers are, and we're looking at all these different projects. And I know you're going to tell me you're going to hire consultants, but consultants require management. They take a lot of time. They don't just walk in and do the job without having staff manage them. So the question for me is that do you really have the staff? Are we having unrealistic expectations?
Through the president, we're a cost recovery department, so we
Well,
receive no general
you see,
fund. But
I understand,
know you've
but,
heard that.
Okay.
But let me try to explain what our plan is. So Supervisor Tissier mentioned vacancies. We've got roughly 5 vacancies in our engineering group that we're filling as we speak. We've got 1 senior engineer, 3 associate positions, and then we'll be hiring an engineer, what's called a public works technician, in our utilities group. So water. One of the functions that Recycle Works did was setting rates in our franchise areas for garbage. When that group goes, we still have that responsibility. We're going to hang on to those franchises. So we're going to add a public works tech to handle rate setting for water, sewer, and garbage. We're going to fill all of our positions as it relates to engineering. We also have on the facility side an extra help position that's being converted to full-time, which is a project manager position. So the plan is to fully staff our positions that are vacant now. We also have an RFQ out right now, a request for qualifications for consulting firms, primarily on the building projects. We've had extremely good results with a firm that we're using on the public safety communications building. We intend to continue to work with them, but get some other folks on board. Because we do have some major project coming up that I want to talk about later. And you're absolutely correct. You need to manage those consultants. Our experience has been that the folks that we're hiring are highly qualified. However, there still needs to be in-house staff to kind of provide quality assurance, quality control on the work that they're doing, as well as make sure that their contract documents and their plans and specs conform with the county's contracting policies. So kind of the long answer is what our plan is to fully staff up, bring in consultants, come back to you at the end of the next fiscal year, look at our ability to produce or complete projects. And if we're still not meeting expectations, that would be the time to reevaluate additional staffing. So that's kind of a long answer.
Through
good
the
answer.
through the president to Supervisor Horsley, and let me congratulate Mr. Porter for keeping his job for another 2 years with that answer. Actually, Jim and I really probably the focus of most of our conversations during the budget is the capital projects. And my first question to him is, what do you need to bring these projects in on time and on budget? So I think he is keenly aware of their responsibility and is matching that with resources. We've also have a contract with retired Lieutenant Bazan to sort of help us take a look at all of our projects in our organization for doing it. And if she may have some suggestions for how we could better apply resources, or even where new resources might be needed for some of those projects. And so Mike's going to work very closely with her in the next few months on that. And if we do feel that we need more resources, we will be back. The one area that I am concerned about, not so much in the 2-year budget, but Jim sort of touched on it lightly, is in the area of roads. Our ability to stretch the road dollar is stretched about as far as we could stretch it. And after the next 2 years, without any additional funding, and I have no great expectations that, I think we are going to see a deterioration in the level of our road maintenance. And at that point, I think we'll need to come back and have a conversation with the board about what we need to do to keep the level of our road maintenance where we think it's prudent.
I want to add something that, if I may, there's 2 or 3 bills really wandering their way through the state legislature on transportation funding. And I know through CSAC, they have been really putting the heat on the assembly to get those passed. There's also, I think Caltrans is talking of testing a miles per vehicle miles tax that they're experimenting with 500 drivers right now. But I think maybe we need to help put some heat on the legislature for the Beals bill and the Atkins bill.
I'll have other questions on the capital projects, but for now, I'll yield the floor.
You sure?
I'm sure. Thanks, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, I guess really for the county managers. And I've never really got my head around the whole cost recovery model in that, they have to bill out all their costs. So, if at some point we need to add resources, does that have to be, what would be so bad about having that not necessarily, that be a general fund contribution, not be cost recovery? Because, we make it so that people don't want to use, we make it too expensive for other departments to work with Public Works, I think.
Through the president, Supervisor Pine, I mean, it really is taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another. When we ask a department to fully pay the cost of providing a service, if it doesn't come out of that department's budget, if it comes out of a general fund, it still has to be paid. Right. The real issue is, does the board really want to have an understanding of the full cost structure providing the myriad of services we provide throughout the county? And unless we get full cost recovery of these services, then you're never going to have a complete picture of what it costs you to provide some of them.
We can talk more offline. It just seems like it's always a tension point. I don't have my head around it.
It is, and we, Mr. Sacco really works very closely with the departments where we see increases are going to impact services of departments to give them leeway in terms of their targets and putting general fund resources into those departments. But we think that's the right way to do it so that we actually see the recovery. The other side of that coin, and I think, certainly this doesn't apply to Mr. Porter because I think he is keenly aware of the costs and their impacts on the departments, but sometimes it's a little too easy for a cost recovery department to simply keep increasing its cost because they have captive clients and you're always going to recover your costs. So I think it's that balance that we have to keep watching, and those are sort of the trade-offs.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for all the time you and your staff have spent during the past couple of years in the North Fair Oaks area with the Middlefield Road redesign. We've been to a lot of council meetings, a lot of neighborhood meetings, and other meetings, and I just appreciate you being there. And I think whenever you're present, I have one meeting, especially in mine, where it got a little contentious. You always seem to have a way of answering the question in a way that calms everybody down, and I appreciate that, and appreciate all your staff's time and your time that has gone into that North Fair Oaks area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Now you want to move to capital?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, President Groom. I'll just jump right into this. Capital projects is handled within the Facilities Division of Public Works. Most of the projects that are in the capital program are managed by Public Works. There is one major exception, the new Maple Street Jail that's being handled by the Sheriff's Office. But we are primarily the department that delivers these projects for you. These pictures are from the 4th floor of County Office Building 1, the Parks offices. If you get a chance, go up there. It's really kind of nice. It's kind of our model project for implementing space standards in the county. And you'll be seeing the concepts that are implemented on that floor more and more as we continue to do tenant improvements within the buildings. So this is pretty straightforward. We basically design, construct, and upgrade county facilities. Most of the capital projects that you see, the big ticket items, are building projects. But the capital program includes a variety of different types of projects that we do, going everywhere from airports to buildings to flood control. There's a lot of projects in there. Some of the accomplishments from the last budget cycle was the Parks Department remodel, as I mentioned. Camp Glenwood, that was a multi-year project. We spent about $3 million at Camp Glenwood doing both interior and exterior renovations. The project came out very nice. We have been working on strategic energy master plan projects as well as FICUS projects, facility condition improvement projects. And those are really geared towards the buildings. But as you saw in the department's budget, we're seeing the payoff now. We're seeing reductions in energy costs. And that's a reduction in overall operating costs. Within the parks, we completed the Woodside Store roof replacement. And that doesn't sound like a big job, but it was a big deal because you needed to put on a roof that conformed with the historical character of the building. And we also had to deal with the Woodside building department. And we had to beat the winter, which was interesting. And we beat it. It was great. And it turned out real good. If you ever get a chance to go out there, take a look. McGuire Correctional Facility mechanical system improvements, those were a major reason why we had the energy savings that we did in the correctional facilities, was all the work we did at McGuire. And then we are doing what's called RFQ, RFP processes for our major building projects. And the way that we're delivering these major projects is through design, build, process. So basically what we're doing is developing what's called bridging documents, is something like 20% design. We then send those documents out and have contractors provide their qualifications. We then shortlist that to 3 contractors and ask them to submit proposals on the projects. So for public safety communications, for instance, we shortlisted to 3. Just recently, 1 dropped out, so we have 2 contractors that are bidding on that project. We're also doing that with the fire stations as well as Cordilleras and a variety of others that I'll hit on as we move forward. Some of the challenges moving forward are exactly what Supervisor Horsley hit on, is how do we deliver all of these projects with the staff we have? And I tried to explain what we're doing. I think what we found is we are going through a building boom at this county. And it makes sense to leverage consultants who are experts in this field. We have staff that is getting very good at this, but it doesn't make sense to the department to staff up with a lot of in-house staff when we know that in 5 to 10 years, this workload's going to die down. So we're going to tap the private sector and tap the folks that are experts at this, have in-house folks manage it, and get these projects done. And that provides the department the flexibility not then to have to staff up and then, unfortunately, we might have to lay people off when the workload calms down. So that's been the method of delivery that we've locked onto and that we're going to use moving forward. The San Mateo Medical Center master plan strategy is going to be a project that's going to have huge implications for the hospital. By 2030, all hospitals in California have to meet current seismic codes. The newer portion of the hospital does meet those codes. The older portion, what we call the 1954 building, does not meet those codes. And so what we're going to do is go through essentially a cost-benefit analysis of retrofitting that building versus tearing it down and perhaps attaching some of the functions of the building to the new hospital and taking some other functions and moving them somewhere else on the campus. Also, we've heard at various meetings that parking is an issue out there. It's been an issue for a long time. So when we look at that master plan, we're going to look at what build-out looks like at that campus and make sure that we provide parking, which will likely be structured parking on that site, to meet the demands and take some of the overflow that the neighbors around that facility are seeing back onto the campus.
Jim, and if I could just add to that, the next item that Jim's going to talk about is the Government Center Master Plan, and those two things are linked in this sense. I think one of the things we probably need to take a hard look at the Medical Center Master Plan is the old health building. In what of those staff, if we're looking at a new building in the Government Center, could potentially move down here, thereby relieving some of the parking strain up there? And so I just wanted to link those two items in your mind for future discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Malpe. For the Redwood City Government Master Plan, this project has many facets. But as you're aware, we're pretty much maxed out on office space right now. And as the county grows and as we look at what happens up at the hospital, we really need to start planning for the future. And by the future, we really need to think about what's going to happen in the next 50 years on this campus. There has been various opinions about how to do that. We've talked about potentially building a new county office building on the block next to us, the First American Title Company block. We've talked about retrofitting or replacing County Office Building 1. The old portion of McGuire Jail is potentially going to be a site where we could put some office space in and over there. But here's what our plan is. We're working with an architect that did the original master plan right now, and we're having them develop a model of this site. And we're having them put together buildings of different heights. So if we build a 12-story building over here on the Fatco block, what does that do for capacity? But what's the look and feel of this campus? If we don't do that, maybe it makes sense to demolish COB1 and build a taller building in that place. What does that look like? And what does the demand for office space look like for these different scenarios? So what will happen is once we have our architect complete that model, we'll be working with board staff to schedule a study session. And what we'd like to do is get the board in a less formal setting where you can talk about what you'd like to do, and we can play around with the model and make a collective decision on how we should move forward. But this is an extremely important project because really this is going to be for the next 2 or 3 generations of county employees and county staff, and we really need to be thoughtful about how we proceed on this. Parking is another huge issue on this campus, and it's very closely linked to the office space demands. Because right now, we have a shortage of parking. As you know, Redwood City is developing around us. We've got more people on this campus, and we're short of parking. So we want to make sure that when we do the Redwood City Campus Master Plan, we look at what build-out looks like or what the board plans to do in the next 50 years and size a parking garage that's appropriate. And when we do that, we need to not only take into account employees that drive, but we need to think about alternatives to driving. How can we bolster our commuter alternative program and try to get more people on public transit and strike that balance? Because these parking garages are extremely expensive, and we want to make sure that we meet our demand, but we don't overbuild, because we don't want to put too much parking in there that might dissuade people from taking public transit. And finally,
Before you go on, I want to go back to the medical center, if I may.
Sure.
You know, Jim and I and Mike and some others made the rounds with talking to the neighborhood about the projects that are going on at the county hospital, including the respite center that's proposed for later in the year. But I want to see if we just can't expedite the planning on this campus. I've been dealing with this space for a long time, both on time in the city council and here, and it's become, it's not just a medical center any longer in that neighborhood that's really causing the burst of parking. It's the Hillsdale Garden Apartments, which have recently been renovated and upscaled, and so there are many more people living there, many more cars on the street that belong to that. Many of the houses in that neighborhood have been remodeled in the past few years, and so they have more cars. And so I think the sooner that we put attention to solving the parking problem on our campus, we will be a better neighbor, and the neighborhood might go back and be a little more at ease.
Okay. We'll try to get that scheduled as soon as possible for the
That would
board,
be-
for a work session.
That would be great.
finally, Tower Road. The county's been approached by the city of San Mateo to try to look at a combined corporation yard up at Tower Road. They're doing some expansions at their sewer treatment plant off of 3rd Avenue, and they found that they've kind of run out of space. Also, their corporation yard is a prime site for housing, as is our grant yard. So this is the first step in looking at what we can do at Tower Road. Our initial investigation has found that we can put in a co-located corporation yard between the county and the city on that campus, but we would need to relocate the elections building. So one of the sites that makes a lot of sense to relocate that to is up by the county library. That's up on, I think it's Lucinda Drive. I always pronounce that wrong. But that parcel could likely take a new library admin office as well as the elections office. So moving forward, we're going to be investigating that further with the city of San Mateo. We will need to come up with cost estimates on what it would cost to relocate that elections building, what the space needs are for the elections officer and his operation, and also what the space needs are for the library. So that's coming up, and that's actually being worked on as we speak. These are the major buildings that we're doing. Supervisor Horsley mentioned these buildings, but we right now have a huge building boom. The public safety communications building is in progress. Cordilleras Mental Health Facility, that's an $85 million project to replace Cordilleras. We're right now in the process of doing the bridging documents for that facility. So far, so good on the initial investigations and the geotechnical work that's gone on up there. What we're going to have to do to fit in a new facility is do some major grading work up there. So that's a challenging project. It'll be multi-year, but we think the outcome is going to be very successful. We're rebuilding the fire stations at Skylonda and Pescadero. Skylonda is a bit further ahead. We have developed the RFQ documents. They're out. We will be getting qualifications from contractors. We'll then go out to RFP. We expect that project to be completed by the end of 2016. For Pescadero, we're currently in a site selection process with the community to find a location for that. Supervisor Horsley's been working closely on that project. So once we get a site, then we can move on that. The animal shelter, we'll be replacing the shelter out by Coyote Point. We're currently working with the current operator to look at what their needs are and what the site will hold. We've gone through a site assessment process as well as a programming process. Right now, the needs are exceeding our budget, so we're going through a value engineering process to try to reduce the scope a bit to get it back down to our budget amount. That's going actually very well at this point. And I mentioned the two projects for the government center and the medical center. So in terms of funding, these numbers are in your budget. They're big numbers. And they're going to be used, the Measure A funding is going to be used within the capital program. The capital program itself is extremely large over the next 2 years. You can see between 14-15 and 15-16, it's increasing by 83%. And then if you look at 15-16 and 16-17, there will be a bit of a decline in 16-17, and that's due to the spending that will occur in 15-16 and also in 16-17. So we do see that coming down a bit. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Just actually, one issue, I've been talking about, we all have been talking about, or maybe I've been talking about Grant Corporation Yard for some time. And I know that you're moving the motor pool over there, but one thing is it is about 5.5 acres, I understand, as the site. I know you're working with the city of San Mateo to move, to have a joint corporation yard up Tower Road, and I know that you've talked to the city of Redwood City. But is it possible, at least on Grant Corporation Yard, to look at, I don't want to delay the project at all with moving the motor pool up there, but is it possible to actually look at that as potentially, do we have to have 5.5 acre site? Could we look at in a more condensed site as a potential? Again, I don't want to slow anything down. I know you have a lot of projects, but it seems to me that there, well, I don't know. I just is there some potential of wasted space? Could you do something in the meantime to make it into use less of the site? Just to,
Through the president.
I don't know that you can, but.
When we plan that site, we're going to be looking at maximizing the space. And what we intend to do, what we are looking at right now is moving our vehicle maintenance and operations up there.
Yeah.
So we service all our heavy equipment at Grant Yard. We do have a smaller vehicle operation up at Tower Road. we'll move everything up to Grant Yard. That leaves our road operations. So the Grant Yard site is where we dispatch folks for South County, actually North County as well. That is our major yard. We still need a presence in South County, and that's where we're working with Redwood City to try to have kind of the road operations function. A bit of those folks stay in this South County area. But yes, to answer your question, that's exactly what we're going to do. What we're going to try to do is look at structured buildings so that we have, rather than having one-story buildings, we'll look at structured buildings. We still need quite a bit of laydown area for not only our equipment. When all our trucks roll in, we need a place for them. And we also need laydown area for our materials. So rock, asphalt, tree trimmings that we get, that sort of stuff. But we will be looking at that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I just had two comments. I mean, it really is incredible how much is in the pipeline that's already fairly well scoped out, and then we have these big decisions to deal with at this center and at the medical center. So given that we really are building out the facilities for 50 years, I definitely support if required having some extra consultancy or maybe some extra staff. It's we just got to get this right, because these decisions only come up every 50 or 60 years. So we're going to leave a big impact on how everything looks. Yeah. And I mean, my instinct is we're still too thin. That's my feeling. But and I'm really like this idea of having some study sessions to there's no perfect solution for the county center. There's a lot of different ideas. So I like the idea of just looking at it and brainstorming about it. And then my second comment, a more narrow one, and I think I may have said it before, is the animal shelter is in a place that's going to be very flood prone, particularly in the decades in the future, and it's important to keep that in mind when you're designing it.
Just a comment through the president. So we did look at sea level rise and its impacts on that shelter. What we're doing as part of the project is building the pad up so that it will at least meet the current tidal maps. Coyote Point, we're going to be needing to work with the cities of Burlingame and San Mateo because there's levees on both sides. But you make a good point. And in fact, all of our capital projects that are within a mile of the bay, we really need to start thinking about how we're going to plan for sea level rise.
Well, yeah, and again, for the big storm events that will come long before we have to deal with serious sea level rise.
So I'd like to ask Supervisor Pine a question.
Yes.
The vulnerability study that you're doing, that will actually take into effect.
Yes, it
that,
will.
Yeah, okay, that'll be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Porter? Thank you very much. And now it's your turn, Mr. Maltby, with non-departmental services. Okay.
President Groom, members of the board, before I start, I'd like to thank my Cracker Jack staff over here. Danielle Lee, Heather Ledesma, Mike Bolender, Matthew Chidester, Mary Claire Katz, Jason Escarino, and Jessica Silverberg. Jessica's actually not even, she's now the homeless coordinator, so we're recruiting now for her position. But anyway, it's a great team, and thanks for your comments earlier about that.
We all think they are a great team, Mr. Sacco, and we love working with them.
Thank you. I need the clicker. Oh, I just realized. So as you know, non-departmental is where we get most of our general fund discretionary income. And from that income, we allocate net county costs to the general fund operating departments, and it's also where we fund countywide initiatives. What I would say here is you can see that the percentages generally have been staying the same the last several years, and even with the opening of the Maple Street Correctional Center, the sheriff has been in that 45 to 47% range for a while. The one thing I would take from this slide is that with the negotiated salary increases and the service charge increases that are related to those, and other things. We have seen an increase in net county costs of 22%, but I think we're in good shape financially, and we have the revenues to support these increases. So the revenues derived in non-departmental include property tax, sales tax, interest. There's a number of revenue sources. Transient occupancy tax, which isn't a big one, but it's an important one in terms of determining how the local economy is doing. And then we also have the vehicle rental tax, which is Measure T. And this next slide shows my projections, and I'll probably take another look at this in September. But you can see the current year projections are pretty much up to the minute. So it looks like sales tax is going to come, property tax is going to come in about 5.8%. Unsecured, which kind of fluctuates up and down all the time, did go up 4.4% this year. The sales tax is kind of an anomaly. We got so much triple flip backfill. You'll recall that we have this triple flip shortfall that the governor keeps funding. So they gave us a lot of that money in 13-14. So it's not like our sales tax is really dropping. The 5% reduction is really because we received so much the prior year that even with 3% growth, it looks like we have a negative. The one thing I thought was interesting here was I don't believe we had Mavericks this year, but transient occupancy tax went up 14.6%, which is interesting. Normally there's a drop when we don't have Mavericks. So I thought that was a good sign. And in the interest earnings, there's a few things going on there. One, we have a high fund balance, and I think they are earning a little bit more. And then plus we also got some Lehman recoveries this year. So that's why you see such a large increase in the interest earnings of 41% this year. So overall growth this year is about 7%. Again, I'm going to look at the out years again, but I've got about 3.5% for the next 2 years. And really the real reason for the drop to 3%, in the outer 3 years is really because I'm just being conservative primarily on the property tax side and lowering it to 4%. This chart shows not all of the ERAF. We started getting ERAF in 2003, 2004, but this current year we received 119 million. And over the course of the time we've been receiving this revenue up to date, we've received $896.6 million, and the current budget appropriates $55 million for the next 2 years. Not all the Measure A comes into non-departmental, but I thought it'd be good to show the board a graph that goes out to 2020 as well. So we received $76 million last year. We're projecting $82 million next year, and then you can see the projections going from 85 up through 96 million in the next 5 years. Those are based on sales tax projections from our outside consultants. So I also mentioned that there's a number of countywide initiatives budgeted in non-departmental. So first we have the technology projects, and this isn't everything, but this is a list of some of them. And I think you heard from John Walton on a few of these things. Data center relocation. They're also doing some remodels for ISD over in COB1. And you could see document sharing. SharePoint is phase 1 and 2 is going to be happening this upcoming year. Card key upgrades, and then also the ongoing IT maintenance of existing systems.
Mr. Sacco?
Yeah.
Didn't Workday take ATKS's place? No?
No, ATKS still exists.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like the front end of, that's still the way you fill out your time card. Yeah. Capital projects totals 133.8 million, and so you just saw Jim Porter's presentation. Well, in terms of his budget, it would be about 108 million of that 133 is funding the facilities capital project. The other 25.6 million is going to be deposited directly into the Maple Street Construction Fund for the warm shell. This way, we can we can benefit from the bond underwriters and the banks in terms of tracking the cost for us and stuff. And once the project's done, if there's any savings, we can just return the money to the general fund. So it kind of makes it, from an administrative standpoint, much easier. And again, as Jim mentioned, that project's being managed by the sheriff's office. The other projects that are being funded, that are funding projects and capital projects, include the old McGuire remodel, the animal shelter that Jim mentioned, 2700 Middlefield Road tear down. That's the parcel we just purchased last year. And a number of improvements: East Palo Alto City Hall, Pescadero Creek flooding. This is again just a small list of all the projects that are being funded. In addition, non-departmental also funds the FICUS projects that Jim mentioned, and in addition, that $133 million includes $40 million in rollover projects from the current year. Debt service for the 2 years totals $8.3 million. That's the portion that's funded out of non-departmental. Total debt service for the county is about $30 million. It'll jump up to $56 million next year with the Maple Street debt service kicking in. And again, the Maple Street debt service, I just want to mention, very aggressive pay down. It essentially gets paid off in 17 years. And it starts off at $25 million for the first 2 years, but then you'll see that debt service drop to $23, $20, and about $2 million a year thereafter. And other countywide initiatives include the additional pension contribution of $39.1 million. So I think Scott mentioned this a little bit yesterday. So this budget includes $10 million a year for the lump sums, so that's $20 million. And then the differential between the blended rate, or the rate that we decided to keep at 38%, the difference between that and the statutory rate is another $9.5 million a year. So the total contribution comes to $39 million for 2 years. There's also $12 million in non-departmental for the Half Moon Bay Library contribution. There's money in both years for statewide elections. We historically fund the Children's Health Initiative, the county general funds portion out of this budget. There's some money continuing for the public administrator transition, and money to HSA for Medi-Cal case processing. I think the two things that we talked about when the assessor made his presentation, $2.1 million for the GIS mapping project and $1 million for the assessor staffing. And then also this was also mentioned when we did the grand jury yesterday, but the auditor's contract moved from the grand jury to non-departmental services. Oh, and this is also where we have the money for the Blue Ribbon Task Forces. So the Measure A initiatives that are funded currently in non-departmental, there is $57 million total for the 2 years, $20 million for healthcare priorities, $15 million for Big Lift, $10 million for Samtrans, $5 million for the Children's Services, and then $7 million for the board district-specific and grants and loans. And then finally, here's where we are on total general fund contingency. So this is not just non-departmental, but it's the entire general fund. And you could see the drop in 15 to 16 is at $184 million. That's primarily because we shifted the funding for the Warm Shell from the ACO fund to general fund. So essentially, without that change, we'd essentially be where we are, where we were in the current year. So that explains the reason. And then again, a lot of spending on one-time projects. The reserve levels are at about 12.7%, which is above the county's general fund requirement of 10%. And that concludes my presentation. I want to thank the board for their leadership and fiscal stewardship, and I also want to thank John Maltby and his deputies, Raina Ferralis, Peggy Jensen, and Mike Halligy, for everything they do to support the unit and the county departments.
Questions for Mr. Sacco?
Just thank you and your Cracker Jack team.
Same with me. You guys have done a terrific job. And you've had a lot to deal with this year because we're adding so many more things, doing many more projects. So it just made that budget process that much more grandiose. But again, with the crackjack staff you have there.
I think also that, as we heard from every department manager this year, we noted again how fiscally responsible they are. And when we've asked for additional Measure A projects, they've accounted for them. And so I think that our entire team really is very respectful of the people's money as we do our job.
I wanted to thank you, Mr. Sacco, and your team as well, and I wanted to let Supervisor Horsley know how proud I am to have hired you so many years ago. It's true. Thank you for accepting that job.
And I tried to.
Thanks
hire
for
him.
offering.
I wanted to add my thanks too. I mean, the budget binder is really a remarkable document. I mean, there's it's going to be one of the most complex. It has to be the most complex document we have, with every dollar accounted for. There's a lot of dollars to be accounted for, and a lot of incredible complexity. So it's an enormous task. You did a great job.
Go ahead and make a motion to tentatively approve the social services, community services, and admin and fiscal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now we're gonna go to, any other comments on the budget? I only have one little aspect, and that was to track the $109.
Yes, I believe that's true. I do believe the board has to adopt the budget resolution also. For
Yes,
the-
that's down a ways on
Oh,
the
okay.
agenda yet.
Sorry.
I had one question on the report back, just because you have a meeting with CARE, HR, and CMO. What is CARE?
Oh, that's the assessor clerk recorder. They also call themselves ACRE. They have that new acronym, Assessor County Clerk Recorder
Oh, I'm
Elections.
sorry. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now is the time for public comment. Is there anyone here that has any wisdom to offer? Okay. We'll go back to the county manager, and Mr. Maltby has some closing remarks.
Madam President, members of the board, I want to add my thanks to the board, to Jim and his outstanding staff. In fact, often when I think of the budget team, I think of the old picture of the duck serenely paddling on the pond. You see the feet going crazy. They're the feet that go, like this all the time. But they make it look so easy, and they do it so well that they have certainly my respect and admiration. And for those of you that are my age and remember Star Trek, remember Spock's mind meld? That's what we're trying to do with Jim. We could do a mind meld to get everything out of that head that's in there. It would be a good thing. Maybe Gene could help us in health. Maybe there's a new. I also want to thank the department heads. They do just an outstanding job. There are all sorts of accolades that are given to folks, but it's their executive ability and their organizational ability that delivers services day in and day out to the people of this county in just an exemplary manner. And in that regard, I particularly want to thank Jean. I won't be here for her going away. I'll be on vacation that week, but and she tells me, no, I'm not gone yet. But Jean has just done an outstanding job in her tenure at the county. Dealt with many difficult issues and handled them just extremely well. And she certainly has my respect and gratitude for just doing an amazing job, Jean, and we'll certainly miss you very much when you do leave. And certainly I want to acknowledge and thank the board, because it really does take a clarity of vision and compassion to do your jobs well. And each and every one of you have both of those qualities in abundance. You have an individual vision of things that need to be done and where the county needs to go, both in the short term and the long term, and you work so well together in order to combine those visions for a countywide vision of what needs to be done. And then you have the compassion, the heart, to really see to it that the core of what the county does, and that is to day in and day out help those that are unable to help themselves, to get them by a difficult period in their lives. You understand that, and it motivates you in what you do, and I have always had a great deal of respect for that and for how you do it. And so I want to thank the board. This will be the last 2-year budget that I'll be submitting. And I think this really is a great representation of the work that this county does and will be doing in the next 2 years. And I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud to have served as your county manager.
Thank you very much, John. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the 2015-16 recommended budget?
I'll make the, oh, go ahead.
Only because it'll be my last 2-year budget as well, so I will be happy to make that,
Okay.
that recommendation for the resolution approving 2015-16 recommended budget submitted by, is it 15-16 and 16-17? Just 15-16, okay. Submitted by the county manager, including the June revisions.
I'll second the motion.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no one is opposed. Thank you again, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Sacco. Board of Supervisors reports. Adrian, you look like you've got one.
I do. Unfortunately, it was a tragedy in San Carlos last Friday. Carol Domenichini was hit and killed by a garbage truck. She was married to John for 26 years. They both met through the airlines when they were working there. They had been living in San Carlos for the last 12 years. They used to frequent the American Legion in San Carlos. She was born in Berkeley. She was, and her mother was originally from Hawaii. She was survived by her husband John, her sister Deborah Erickson, and her brother Alan. She was preceded in death by her brother Terry. And a celebration of life will be held at the American Legion at a later date.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we're adjourned.
Yippee.